more socio-economic disadvantages due to lack of learning opportunities like facilities to acquire productive skills, either through quality education or non-formal activities like skill training, hobby classes for knowledge enhancement and self-development to become productive individuals. The self-development is a natural, continuous human developmental process which begins right from birth for developing stronger sense of self, including emotional and social awareness with socialization, games, and play among students. There have been several developmental problems which have been noticed among underprivileged schoolgirl students. These are some of the points which have been noticed as societal lacuna in providing public healthcare system, affecting the social mental health care with reduced productivity among underprivileged members. Lack of productive skills also affects empathy and self-development. This has been noticed by Sigmund Freud long back. And the learning disinterest, low self-esteem, lower school attendance due to lack of social and emotional skills development leads to social and educational impairment and failure to retain enrolled underprivileged girl students in schools till the school scores completion. So like this, there are many various reasons for the declining productive skills need to be improved. Though academic and social failure, educational and social impairments, low social interactions and low quality knowledge exchange between teachers and students are some of the reasons, some of the causes for developmental problems. So some of the important self-developmental problems includes reduced self-worth, literary backwardness, low socioeconomic status, which plays a major role. The prevalence and causes of negative behavioral outcome among underprivileged girl students. These behavioral problems are known to be affecting 20% of the young and pre-adolescent Indian population without rural or urban differences during the onset of puberty and later stages of adolescence. This has been stated by World Health Organization. Negative behavioral outcome also affects physical, moral, emotional development due to toxic early years of self-developmental stages among underprivileged individuals without self-regulatory learning aspects. Internalizing cognitive behavioral problems also affects more than 15% of younger girl children and adolescents, resulting in obesity, negative behavioral outcome, and low social skills. Fear of punishment and criticism, fear of peer rejection, fear of failure induces poor social skills and negative behavioral outcome as shyness, low self-efficacy, low self-esteem that affects learning and self-development among students. Low self-regulation with academic unpreparedness also manifests negative behavioral outcome and also low social skills. Lack of learning materials, low parental and societal support induces negative behavioral outcome. It is a multi-dimensional social problem which affects relationship in family, peer social groups, and neighborhood communities. Low social skills during puberty, which affects self-development, have been noticed. The negative body image during puberty induces shyness, low self-efficacy, low self-esteem, causing low social skills with reluctance to socially interact with peers. There are some other low social skills having effect on the self-development, like poor social skills affect overall personal growth, along with socio-economic and cultural factors across all age groups of underprivileged community. It has been noted by American Academy of Pediatrics. Socio-cognitive and socio-emotional learning gets affected by poor social skills. Lack of group activity or games with friends also affects social skills and self-development. Occasional impairment also induces low self-esteem, which causes poor social skills. Absence of pro-social and proactive behavior, absence of belonging, difficulty in accepting the weakness or personal strengths, low empathy factors due to rigidity in thinking, fear of failures, fear of punishment also affect the natural process of self-developmental stages at important milestones of life events like puberty period. Inability in making friendships due to shyness, low self-efficacy, rigidity in thinking, and low self-esteem diminishes the most important missions of middle childhood social skills that affect self-development among the young students. Somers and Flanagan has observed the following behavioral problems due to lack of social skills among puberty-aged and adolescent students.
Sorry, Krishnaveni, sorry for the interruption.
Yes, ma'am.
We have just got Dr. Gopinathan, our subject expert. Sir, I welcome you, sir. Dr. Gopinathan. Okay. All right, he is also with us.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, you can continue.
Fear of peer rejection and criticism creates shyness, low self-efficacy, and low self-esteem. Lack of proactive and pro-social nature causes social interaction inhibitions and social avoidance. Blaming others for their actions without personal accountability also induces self-loathing attitude. Exhibiting poor peer relationships and low school performance. Inability to feel the effects of empathy on self and on others. Low self-awareness leads to very little empathy for well-being of others, causing relationship conflicts. So here we can notice that social isolation and economic backwardness, along with poor quality teaching methods and students' learning ability, act as a major challenge in underprivileged schoolgirls' education. Focus of conceptual teaching for optimal learning by the educators and inability to apply that knowledge into learning are the problems of underprivileged students. So these are some of the factors which attributes to the self-development problems among underprivileged members. So there are precursors and diathesis or predisposition factors which leads to stressors and resulting in the self-developmental problems. So in precursors, majorly we are seeing the genetics which is creating anxiety and mental disorders as per the studies. And this social anxiety disorders becomes one of the stressors to induce lack of self-awareness and self-developmental deficits. So like that, various problems have been added as a precursors and their effects on self-development. So on the whole, biopsychosocial model, which is showing the attributes of shyness, low self-efficacy, low self-esteem among the students, has been depicted in this particular diagram. The self-development barriers, one among them is shyness, and this shyness is caused by low parental guidance and encouragement, inactive social support that causes shyness among students. Generally, females are more likely to experience shyness than males, especially in early childhood, and young girls experience more shy during puberty age than boys. Prejudice, cognitive distortions cause shyness. Low socio-cognitive and socio-emotional development induces shyness with inadequate feeling. Peer rejection, abusive relationships, inhibited social interactions, low communicative skills, and academic difficulties also induces shyness. Absence of supportive neighborhood influences internalizing maladaptive cognitive aspects into low empathy, which leads to relationship problems and inability to work in groups. There are certain factors which affect self-efficacy. Inability to make friends, difficulties for mixing and working in social groups are one of the self-efficacy reducing factors. Puberty age-related physiological reactions like foul body odor, which reduces self-efficacy and self-worth among young generation. Poor academic performance with below average of literacy and literary skills induces negative behavioral outcome as stereotyped shyness by underestimating their own intelligence and ability, which also results in low self-efficacy and low self-esteem. Abusive, cold, and harsh parenting styles also create fearful environmental factors with anxiety-related psychosomatic and stammering problems, such as language deficits without active listening ability and low moral reasoning in decision-making ability. Social avoidance behavior and social skill deficits, including self-blaming behavior, fear of being rejected, induces low self-efficacy. Poor self-regulation is also affects self-regulation, self-development. The self-regulation is one of the major social and life skills which controls emotions and thoughts in brains. And it is a goal-directed activity, and it can be learned as observational learning, which generates unconscious mirroring acts through warm and responsive relationships. When this kind of self-regulation setting is lacking in the underprivileged young children, it results in lack of self-regulation. And this leads to inability to think through between a feeling and an action as an impulsive behavior, and that affects the process of self-development, and it also makes the academic life as very quite challenging one. Low self-regulation induces hesitation, fear of attempting new experiments, fear of failure, fear of peer criticism, and social interaction inhibitions also results in low social skills, socialization deficits, physiological and psychosomatic disturbances, along with low self-esteem factors. And these are all known as negative behavioral outcome problems. Low self-esteem affecting the self-development. Because of the body odor which emits during the puberty setting period, it increases shyness, low self-efficacy, and low self-esteem factors. Suppressing the original ideas and seeking others' approval for evaluating the self-worth also causes low self-esteem. And another cause is relationship conflicts, fear factors, low social skills, emotional anxiety, low self-efficacy, and negative behavioral outcome. Physical appearance also causes shyness and self-loathing problems. Low moral reasoning and lack of supportive friends and peer groups in schools affects their self-esteem. Concepts of self-development.
KRISHNAVENI,
Yes, ma'am.
can you please go to the objectives?
Okay, ma'am. This is only one slide is over. This is only the stages how the self-development takes place from comfort zone to fear zone, and from fear zone to how they should come to learning zone is the part where the self-development is helpful. And from learning zone to growth zone they go. Next. Statement of the problem. This present study is aimed at finding out the isolated and combined effects of traditional games and social skills training on self-development among underprivileged schoolgirl students in Chennai. The objectives were derived based on the previous result reviews of various related literature and the research gap in this experimental study. The objectives were derived in order to find out the solutions for the framed research problem. The objectives included to examine whether isolated traditional games training improved self-development among underprivileged schoolgirl students, to determine whether isolated social skills training would show positive effects on self-development, to determine whether combined training of social traditional games with social skills showed significant positive changes on self-development when compared to isolated traditional games and isolated social skills training, to determine the effect of no training in control group on the selected dependent variables, and to examine the magnitude of changes through effect size calculation post-training on the selected variables among the chosen subjects. The research hypothesis used in this study included two null hypotheses, which states that there would not be any normal data distribution present before 12 weeks training intervention among the experimental groups, isolated traditional games training group, isolated social skills training group, combined traditional games and social skills group, and control group on shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation with its 4 variables known as external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, intrinsic motivation. And the last variable, self-esteem among the selected underprivileged schoolgirl students. The second hypothesis was there would not be any randomization and group matching existed before 12 weeks of training during the pre-test situation among the chosen experimental groups, ITG, ISTG, CTG. These abbreviations as given in the next slide. And on shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation with 4 variables, and these variables along with self-esteem. These are 3, 4, 5, 6, I have combined every hypothesis into one, so that the common things I will be reading out. There will be significant differential effectiveness on selected variables, that is on shyness, due to 12 weeks of isolated traditional games training, isolated social skills training, combined training of traditional games with social skills, and no training among the chosen subjects. On the fourth hypothesis, there will be significant differential effectiveness on self-efficacy due to 12 weeks of isolated traditional games training and isolated social skills training, combined training of traditional games with social skills, and no training among the chosen subjects. On the fifth hypothesis, there will be significant differential effectiveness on self-regulation with its 4 subvariables: external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, intrinsic motivation, due to 12 weeks of isolated traditional games training, isolated social skills training, combined training of traditional games with social skills, and no training among the chosen subjects. The sixth hypothesis is there will be significant differential effectiveness on self-esteem due to 12 weeks of isolated traditional games training, isolated social skills training, combined training of traditional games with social skills, and no training among the chosen subjects. The seventh hypothesis states there will be significant differential effectiveness with significant magnitude of changes among isolated traditional games group, isolated social skills training group, and combined traditional games with social skills group due to intervention of 12 weeks of isolated training of traditional games, as we have mentioned earlier, as an effective interventional strategies on self-development related dependent variables: shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation with its 4 subvariables, and self-esteem of chosen underprivileged schoolgirl students. These are the 7 hypotheses that were framed, and the psychological tools which were used to testing the results on these variables were the shyness scale, which was revised by Cheek and Buss, which has got maximum number of items with 20, and it is being measured in scores, and it is a Likert type of scale, and the Cronbach alpha reliability is 0.96. These are all standardized questionnaires. Even the self-efficacy is also
just read
out Turner and Erickson, and it has been
just read out the listeners.
Yes, ma'am. The limitations and delimitations includes the subject's cultural, physical, physiological, and personal dietary habits and family hereditary, which might have influenced the results, were not taken into consideration in this study. The subject's possible previous experience in sports were not considered in this study. And the study was delimited only to underprivileged schoolgirl students of age between 9 to 13 years in Chennai only. The selection of variables, the independent and dependent variables were selected based on the reviews of available relevant literature and through exploring information from various journals, articles, e-material sources, interacting with the subject experts in the field to obtain suggestions as input, along with checking the availability of reliable tools in processing the study further in time-bound, systematic manner. The independent variables were isolated traditional games training, isolated social skills training, combined traditional games with social skills, and no training is for the control group. The dependent variables were shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation with 4 subvariables, external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, intrinsic motivation, and the 4th dependent variable is self-esteem. This is a schematic representation of nature of sample and sample collection, which is used in this experimental study. It's a longitudinal study which is taken up in Chennai city. Underprivileged school children were the subjects. The 60 girl students were selected randomly within the age group of 9 to 13 years, and they were randomly assigned into 4 groups, which is isolated traditional games training group, isolated social skills training group, combined traditional games with social skills group, and the last one is control group. Each group was having 15 girl students equally, and they have been undergone with pre-test and post-test randomized group design. It is used as a research design. The methodology which was adopted in this study has been shown as a flow chart. And this is the flow chart which shows that. After pre-test, the post-test was also conducted with the same questionnaires, and statistical analysis has been done, followed by results discussions and conclusions. The research design included the pre-test and post-test through randomized group research design, which is comprised of 12 weeks of isolated traditional games training for selected 15 subjects, which underwent only isolated training of traditional games. And that is grouped as ITG. And only isolated social skills training was given for 15 subjects as ISTG. Combined traditional games with training with social skills for 15 subjects is grouped as CTG. The training interventions were administered 6 days a week for 60 minutes of duration, twice at morning and evening for different training groups, totaling with 36 equal sessions for all the experimental training groups in a systemized, time-bound manner, leading to the investigation of the research problem in a scientific way that provided an appropriate framework for this study. And finally, the no training group, the control group, was also comprised of randomly selected 15 girl students from the 60 among the 60 subjects, and they did not underwent any kind of training, but continued with their regular daily activities in school. The organized data collection procedure was designed to obtain the required data, and it was collected accordingly before the beginning of 12 weeks of designated training program. That was at pre-test and at the end of 12-week training program as post-test under the prescribed conditions. Pilot study was also undertaken in this study. So according to the brief study pilot requirement, the training program was conducted with 16 subjects in schools to test the suitability, frequency, and duration of the training. And these participated subjects were not included in the main sample of the current experimental study. Thus, this brief pilot study was carried out with the help of assisting volunteers and teachers for a period of 3 weeks, which enabled the researcher to verify the validity, frequency, acceptability by the subjects, and if any difficulty that may arise, to have an alternate idea, to know about the time duration for carrying out the research test. These participants were not included deliberately in the main study. These were exclusively used only for the pilot study. This is the time chart schedule, which is used for this isolated traditional games training for 12 weeks. This isolated traditional games training for daily scheduled. The same way, isolated social skills training schedule also has been charted out for 12 weeks. And this is daily chart schedule. This is 12-week training schedule for combined training of traditional games with social skills, which includes both the programs which was used as in the isolated traditional games and isolated social skills training schedules. The statistical technique used in the experimental study. The collected data from all the 60 subjects of the experimental groups was statistically analyzed by the variance of ANOVA with one way at pre-test condition to determine the normality of data distribution and randomization with group matching at post-test situation among all the experimental groups, and repeated measures ANOVA was used to determine the changes between pre-test to post-test situation. Based on the obtained results, again, the significant changes among the experimental groups and the dependent variables were determined by Scheffe's post hoc test. To measure the individual training effectiveness, the effect size calculation was also carried out by Cohen's d method to find out the magnitude of changes among the 3 experimental groups on shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation with its 4 subvariables, external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, intrinsic motivation, and self-esteem among the selected underprivileged schoolgirl students. Since positivism was expected from the results, only directional hypotheses were used with 0.05 level of confidence as fixed in this study to test the frame research hypothesis. These are the operational definitions which are used in this.
Go for the discussion. Go to the discussion. Discussion.
Yes, ma'am.
Discussion, table discussion.
हाँ मैम. This is Shapiro-Wilk test, which was used to determine the normal data distribution among the experimental groups before 12 weeks of training intervention. And this was used at pre-test situation to see whether the normal distribution of data has been existed in the among the experimental groups. So all the values which have been noted below 0.05 showing as non-significant in all the variables in all the 4 experimental groups. It shows that non-significant scores confirming the normal data distribution among the 3 experimental groups before training interventions. And hence, the first null hypothesis, which was stated that there would not be any normal data distribution present before 12 weeks of training intervention among the experimental groups, ITG, ISTG, CTG, and CG on shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation with its 4 subvariables, external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, intrinsic motivation, self-esteem among the selected underprivileged schoolgirl students was rejected, and alternate research hypothesis was accepted at 0.05 level of confidence, which means there was normal data distribution present among all the experimental groups before 12 weeks training. This chart shows the randomized group matching during the pre-test before training. The pre-mean scores of variables among the experimental groups ITG, ISTG, CTG, and CG on the chosen subjects can be seen on different charts. The ITG value, ISTG, CTG, and CG, all these values shows the pre-mean scores and mean standard deviation scores before the training, which all shows in the F value, which is if F value is lesser than the P value, then it was significant. And if it is F value is greater than P value, then it was non-significant. I'm sorry. If the F value is greater than P values, it shows significant scores. The non-significance is showed here on the variables which are negative rated. So all the positive rated variables have shown significant. That means there was non-significance before the training. And the second null hypothesis, which was stated that there would not be randomized group matching present before the training intervention among the experimental groups, was rejected, and alternate research hypothesis was accepted at 0.05 level of confidence. That means there was randomization as well as group matching present before 12 weeks of training interventions. Since we have taken one-way ANOVA to determine the changes in the mean groups, the same one-way ANOVA has been applied on the post-test also. So the same test was repeated at post-test sessions with same subjects with varied training methods on same variables repeatedly. So to determine the changes from pre-test to post-test sessions, ANOVA with repeated measures was applied to determine the training effects on self-development related variables, namely shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation with its 4 subvariables, external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, intrinsic motivation, self-esteem among the experimental groups. The obtained Sheffey's post-hoc test results showed significant mean differences on all the dependent variables, including shyness scores, due to 12 weeks of isolated traditional games training, isolated social skills training, combined training of traditional games with social skills training, control group without training among the selected underprivileged schoolgirl students. Based on the results, the line diagram also was drawn. These are the charts which shows differential effectiveness of scores on shyness among different experimental groups like ITG, ISTG, CTG, and CG, which shows the mean standard deviation scores as in one column, first column. The difference between pre-test to post-test has been measured as 7.00, which is greater than 0.05, 6.13 in isolated social skills training group, which is less than 0.05. CTG recorded 22.60 as difference, and that is also greater than 0.05. Control group recorded 2.13, which is greater than 0.05. F value with the pre-test and post-test values showing that there was a decrease, which means when the shyness scores has decreased, there was an improvement, as this shyness is a negative rated variable. And this was shown in the line diagram, which shows that mean shyness scores, where the ITG is scoring from pre-test to post-test, and ISTG is at the second place. CTG scored maximum, which can be seen in Sheffey's post-hoc test. So from non-significant to it changed to significant changes. Even the self-efficacy also showing, the chart is showing that the significant values have increased and that F value is greater than 0.05. So this hypothesis is also accepted, and thus that has been shown in the line diagram, which shows the mean self-efficacy scores. And this Sheffey's post-hoc test also showing the significant mean difference among the different experimental groups. And this CTG is shown to be in the maximum effective place, which is 15.00. ISTG and ITG both scored in the second place. And control group is scored 1.13. This chart is differential effectiveness scores on self-regulation. And this includes all the 4 subvariables. And here also mean standard deviation from pre-test to post-test has been recorded. And all this difference from pre-test to post-test is known to be greater than 0.05. And F value is also greater than P value, which shows that non-significant values has been changed to significant. These are the line diagrams, corresponding line diagrams, which has been shown for the external regulation scores with Sheffey's post-hoc test, introjected regulation scores, along with Sheffey's post-hoc test. And these line diagrams showing the identified regulation mean scores, and the Sheffey's post-hoc test for identified regulation. This being positive rated subvariable, this has been considered from significant to significant only, but there was a significant increase in that score. Even the intrinsic motivation is also being depicted here. This one is for the self-esteem, and this self-esteem also means standard deviation from pre-test to post-test has been recorded here across the experimental groups. This is in isolated traditional games group, we can see 2.66, which is greater than 0.05. In isolated social skills training group, 2.73 is greater than 0.05. In control combined traditional games and social skills group, it is 6.46, which is greater than 0.05. Control group has got 1.06, again, which is greater than 0.05. And F value is also being scored. P value is being noticed, and P value is 0.05. It is greater than 0.05. And this is being scored from significant to significant. It is changed from significant. The discussion on control group. In field research, experimental and control groups are more likely to differ systematically on important dimensions other than the independent variables. Comparisons between experimental groups with control group may not yield the unbiased estimates of the impact. And there are studies which also discussed about the reviews, the problems using control groups in field research. And another study is also described different research design that has the potential for providing the unbiased estimates of impact without the use of a control group. Though this study stresses that point of not having control group for this experimental study, it is necessary to have them as a benchmark to compare the training effects as experimental group measurements. Their non-participation during the interventions also become very important to determine the overall interventional study results. In this particular current study, there was no significant difference existed on shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation, external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, intrinsic motivation, which are subvariables of self-regulation, and on self-esteem among the control group due to no intervention. That is why only training interventional effects were calculated as the effect size calculation to find out the magnitude of changes on selected variables among the chosen subjects under prescribed limitations. The central finding of this experimental study. This experimental study was aimed to find out the effectiveness of the 12 weeks of isolated traditional games training and isolated social skills training, combined training of traditional games with social skills, and control group of no training as different interventional training strategies on self-development related psychological dependent variables such as shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation with its 4 subvariables, external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, intrinsic motivation, self-esteem among the chosen underprivileged girl students. So this was hypothesized as there will be significant differential effectiveness with maximum magnitude of changes due to 12 weeks of combined training intervention among combined traditional games with social skills group when compared to ITG and ISTG with medium magnitude of changes on shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation with its 4 subvariables, external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, intrinsic motivation, self-esteem of chosen underprivileged schoolgirl students. This particular chart has been made according to the values of Cohen's d method. The interventional effect size is noticed as the change of magnitude, and magnitude of training impact is being depicted as if the values are below 0.50, then the training effect would be considered as medium. If it is exceeding 0.50 and below 0. If it is exceeding 0.50, if it is below than 0.80, then it will be considered as medium. For small effects, the values would be below 0.50. So if it is more than 0.80, the impact of the training would be considered as large. So according to that values, the obtained values, the magnitudinal change has been displayed here on all the variables. Whereas here we are seeing on shyness in the isolated traditional games group, the impact was large. And in isolated social skills training group, the impact was medium. The combined traditional games with social skills group, the impact was large. And on self-efficacy, in ITG, it was medium. In ISTG, it was large. In CTG, it was large. On self-regulation, across the ITG, ISTG, and CTG, the ITG has shown medium effects. ISTG has shown large effects. The CTG has got large effects. On introjected regulations, the same ITG has shown large effects. ISTG has shown large effects. CTG also has got large effects. On the whole, the introjected regulation was having maximum impact on all the 3 experimental groups. The identified regulation also showed across ITG as medium, ISTG as medium, CTG as large. Intrinsic motivation also has got more than above, it is above 0.80 value. So it is considered as large, and ISTG has shown 0.688, which is less than 0.80, that is medium impact, and combined traditional games with social skills group showed 1.597, which is greater than 0.80 as large impact. The self-esteem has got 6.453, which is again greater than 0.80 as large. In ISTG, it is once again large. And in CTG, 7.026, which is greater than 0.80 as large. Summary. The current experimental result study was based on the results of previous related studies that have been undertaken in the area of either individual or team traditional games or social skills over the years pertaining to the arena of academic life and on sports. Various related literatures were reviewed, assessed, and their results were found to be positive in all the instances.
You go to conclusions straight.
Okay, ma'am. Within the purview of limitations in the present experimental study, the following conclusions were drawn. The first hypothesis, which stated that there would not be any normal data distribution observed before 12 weeks of training interventions among the experimental groups, ITG, ISTG, CTG, and control group of the selected underprivileged students, proved to be rejected as null hypothesis, and research hypothesis was accepted at 0.05 level of confidence. The second hypothesis was also the null hypothesis, and it was also rejected, and research hypothesis was accepted at 0.05 level of confidence. The third hypothesis, which stated that there would be significant differential effectiveness on the reduction in shyness among the groups which underwent isolated traditional games training, isolated social skills training, combined training of traditional games with social skills, and control group which did not undergo any training. And this hypothesis is accepted at 0.05 level of confidence. And this study is in line with the results of the previous studies, which has been showed reduced shyness due to traditional games training and due to social skills intervention. The fourth hypothesis, which stated that there would be significant differential effectiveness on the improvement of self-efficacy among the groups, experimental groups, ITG, ISTG, CTG, and control group. This hypothesis was accepted at 0.05 level of confidence. And this study is in line with the results of previous studies, which has been shown positive on the self-efficacy improvement. The fifth hypothesis, there would be significant differential changes on the self-regulation with its 4 subvariables: external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, and intrinsic motivation among the groups ITG, ISTG, CTG, and combined control group, which this hypothesis also got accepted at 0.05 level of confidence. This study is in line with the results, with previous results, which has been shown as in the column. The 4 subvariables also has got the same results, and that
conclusions
has been matched with that.
Go to the conclusions.
Okay, ma'am. The final outcome of this experimental study. According to the results of this experimental study, it was concluded that combined training with traditional games and social skills was found to be more effective training method than isolated traditional games training and isolated social skills training, by showing maximum effects in terms of significant improvement among the 3 training methods on shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation with subvariables, external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, intrinsic motivation, and self-esteem among the selected underprivileged girls students. Recommendations and suggestions for the further research. Study of the same nature may be conducted among the intercollegiate female athletes and non-sports participating students of rural and urban colleges with same psychological variables in detail, adding other sociological variables to study the elaborated positive effects of interventions. The study may be conducted with cross populations with mixed age of team players to enhance the effectiveness of the generalization in sports through isolated traditional games alone, which might help in detailed assessment of the intricate and interconnected psychological processes of shyness, self-efficacy, self-regulation, and self-esteem. A new study can be conducted with only isolated social skills training between different sports groups to assess and compare the importance of community bonding and emotional support, focusing the excellence within the teams to rectify the problematic areas in their chosen sports. The research with combined intervention of traditional games and social skills training may be undertaken with 1 year duration among the individual game players like archery, shooting, chess players, focusing on developing the attention as well as socialization factors. A study can be made to set the direction for utilizing the potentially huge and untapped research area about the underprivileged sports players of all age groups from different teams with isolated and combined traditional games and social skills training interventions to improve sports achievement motivation along with required specific skill enhancements. And I thank everyone for this opportunity, and I handing over these sessions to my research guide, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Krishnaveni. So we have some experts over here. So I would request you people to give some inputs on the work that has been done by my scholar. Dr. Vijay Lakshmi. Dr. Vijay Lakshmi. Dr. Vijay Lakshmi.
Ma'am, you can unmute now, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Yes, it's nice presentation from KRISHNAVENI, ma'am. I'm so happy, but I would like to know that what are all the practical difficulties you faced while you gave the intervention social skill, that is isolation social skill training, 12 weeks you gave. So you gave that combined training as well as that one group for the social skill training. So what are all the practical difficulties you faced? What kind of the training you gave into that social skill training?
Thank you for the question, ma'am. Actually, when I started to gather the data collection, then itself I was having a problem of underprivileged schools, which is having low attendance of students. There was shortage of students. So for that reason, I had to search for the schools which were really catering to that kind of underprivileged children only. And finally, when we saw that there was a school which has got 9 to 13 years, and if we focus on this particular age bracket, then there will be stoppage, like we can prevent their school discontinuation. That was the feedback that we got from the school's headmistress. And so we, with the help of those school teachers only, we could arrange these kind of student strength, ma'am. This was the real practical difficulty that we faced here in the starting initial stages. And once the school teachers were in the field, then everything got set into the field. And by maintaining the time schedules, like in the morning and all, they would like to play. So by 7 o'clock, they would assemble in the school premises. And the school teachers also helped in volunteering. And it was because there was no strict rules adopted in this traditional games. They were happily and voluntarily coming to the course. And even before intervention also, the teachers asked on them to be continuously coming for these 12 weeks. And even the students also obliged.
And also, Dr. Vijay Lakshmi, since we did not wanted from other school, because, we were very particular about the uniformity in the infrastructure, in terms of discipline, everything, because we wanted everything as it is. So there was a sister concern of the same school. So the same policies, the same infrastructure, everything, the climate of the institution, everything was the same. So that's the reason, we had to take another sample, few more children from the other school also.
Okay, to
Because
avoid
we did not wanted, overall, we did not wanted any difference, because as it is, that should not, pay a hindrance, in our way, so that, it should not be diluted. So that's the reason we were very particular. We were looking out for a bigger sample from one particular school. Since we were not able to, we took the sister concern. So everything was almost the same. It was just a different premises. That's all, not much.
Okay, I can understand. To avoid the bias. Okay, it's good.
Okay, yeah.
One more thing I would like to know about that in the statistical analysis, she explained that self-esteem have a larger impact in all this area, even traditional games, art, isolated social skill, art, combined traditional. How that self-esteem have a more impact in her perspective, what she's explaining.
Thank you, ma'am, for the question. Here in this schedule, if you can notice, there was only on the combined training of the traditional games with social skills training only, there was large impact to be seen. Whereas in the isolated traditional games, some of the variables have scored medium. And in isolated social skills training also, they have scored medium, because both the interventions were almost similar in the effect. The missing parts of these both interventions were combined in the third group, and so it must be possible to get that large impact in the combined traditional groups naturally. That's what I feel, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else, ma'am? Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. Any inputs from the other people, like, if you have anything you could contribute, because this would, help in some way or the other, because we are open for any kind of, remarks or whatever it is. Even if you have anything, any critical analysis also, we would like to know what it is. Yes, Dr. Grace?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
KRISHNAVENI. And it was a wonderful study, and she has done a meticulous work. So once again, I congratulate to her. Only observation is mine is in some places it is written as in present tense, is or like that. Okay. Ask her to kindly go through that and
that will
do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yes.
Yeah. That's the observation, and other things she has done it well. And I thought that she would show us regarding the traditional games, what are the games, how it had been conducted, all those things. But it was shown only in one table.
No, that she has not shown it, because everything
that's what I could not listen regarding that. No problem, but anyway, she has done a wonderful study, and presentation was also good. And kindly make sure that it is written in
yes, past tense. Yes,
past tense. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Once again, congratulations.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yes. Dr. Prem? Dr. Gopinath? Dr. Gopinathan?
You can proceed, ma'am.
No, I don't think he's there, Dr. Gopinathan. So, Dr. Prem, if nothing is there, can we wind up? Can I?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
all right. Yeah. Sorry?
I just congratulate.
Thank you, ma'am. All right.
The guide and the scholar, Dr. KRISHNAVENI, she has done a wonderful work, really. I know how she was struggling to collect the data and other things.
Yeah.
She did a good job. Congratulations, KRISHNAVENI.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, all the best.
All right, we'll wind up, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else? No. All right. Okay, let me thank. I'm very much thankful for all the faculty members, the external examiner, Dr. Vijay Lakshmi. I know your university has reopened, and now you must be, it must be quite hectic to, create this time, especially in the afternoons, because where you have all the practicals, all that. Thank you very much, Vijay Lakshmi, for being with us and giving your inputs. I thank Dr. Prem Kumar for being with us, Mangai ma'am, Dr. Grace, and all the colleagues, whoever are with us today this afternoon, and all the students, the past students, the present students, and other research scholars, and other friends of mine and Krishnaveni's and whoever has attended. I profound my heartful thanks to one and all. Thank you very much. And, Uma, thank you very much, because, this has, thank you very much for your service. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Ma'am,
Yes. Anita, yeah, thank you, Anita, being with us. Anything?
one thing
Anita?
I want to say, ma'am,
Yeah,
congratulations, congratulations to you and Krishnaveni.
Okay.
I have
Anything
seen
related
the
to statistics? Yeah, please.
for the hypothesis, she have given the all or alternative research hypothesis only she have mentioned in the conclusion. Okay. But in the conclusion, she have given that null hypothesis is rejected. So she has to change the word.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
hypothesis is given there, that should be is rejected.
Yeah,
Okay. Third, she has to change.
All right.
Congratulations, ma'am, once again.
All right. Thank you very much, Anita. Yes,
Okay.
definitely. This will be considered. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So shall we wind up now? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.